That's the kind of talent we have in Greater Minnesota, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited to introduce our legislative panel for the afternoon. Starting from the right, we've got Senator Mark Johnson, who's Deputy Majority Leader in the Senate, represents the district up in far northwest Minnesota. To his left, we've got Melissa Lopez-Franson, who represents a district here in the Metro. To her left, we've got Speaker Melissa Hortman, who represents a district in the North Metro, not far from where I grew up. And then on the extreme left end, as where you would expect him, we've got Representative Chris Swedzinski, representing the House Republican Caucus, represents a district in Southwest Minnesota. So we're going to just kind of jump right in here and ask some questions, talk about the legislative session, talk about expectations for the year, talk a little bit about redistricting. But first, obviously, you know, as we've noted all along all day, we're sort of in this, you know, transition into getting a little bit back to normal in terms of activities and such, and the legislature is on that journey as well. So, you know, this session, the legislature has been moving towards more in-person accessibility to the legislative process, but it's not quite complete. What can the public expect in terms of legislators' accessibility here for the rest of session? What will they see this afternoon when they show up at the Capitol, and how are things going to change here going forward? And we'll just start with Senator Johnson. Sure, if you want.
Can't see the back of the room too well here, but no, thank you very much. Thank you for taking time to listen to some politicians up here talk about politics down in St. Paul. It's good to see everybody back again. This is really the first day it's felt like the Minnesota legislature again, with people around. We have AMC and we have League and we have so many different people coming around. So it's good to see. So yeah, your question then one more time.
So what?
Oh, the accessibility.
The accessibility, and what are we going to see, and how's it going to change?
So for the Senate, that's why I forget. The Senate has been open. We've had a great plan set forth by our staff. We've worked really hard with both leadership, nonpartisan staff, with the Secretary of the Senate, putting together a plan that would increase the safety of individuals within the Senate, so that we wouldn't have necessarily be an epicenter. I know before it's always been kind of one of those areas where you come into it and you say, you know, somebody's going to get sick because of just the close contacts that you have there. But we've done a really good job of trying to regulate the flow of individuals and where they're going to be. So we have been dedicated to having in-person meetings. We've been dedicated to being, you know, even the hybrid if people don't feel comfortable there. But we really believe in the relationships that the Senate, that the institution is about. And so we have really stressed the importance of staying open. So I'm just glad you guys are here, that everybody's taking advantage of that.
All right. Senator Lopez-Franson, from your perspective, where are we at on the journey of the legislature here?
Well, I'm not going to restate what Senator Johnson mentioned, but we have had some differences of how each member operates, because they hire their own staff. So if there's a staffer who has childcare issue, or there's a member who has childcare issues, we've been flexible with that. But frankly, a lot of us have been in the legislature in person for the entire pandemic. So we've just have had closures of our buildings, either via executive order, or in this case, now it's been opening up little by little, and every week is a little different, and we don't always get the memo. So we're in the minority, so we're not in charge of how those rules are done, but we certainly want to make sure that we put our input, because there's a lot of nonpartisan staff that you all might not even see that work in the Capitol. We want to make sure that people are safe. And we made the accommodations for folks in different offices, but at the same time, we know that there's still some strains with childcare, and I'm sure that's some of the topics we'll talk about here as well. But we're open for business, and we're quickly adapting. The last thing that remains is our wings will be opening up soon. We've kept them closed by appointment only, but there's members and staff within those offices. So if you've made appointments, I'm sure you'll have no problem coming in. The elevators too were restricted for quite some time, and now they're open as well. So there are people along the hallways, and it's really exciting to see it come back to life. So not much different. It's just opening up like every other business is right now.
Madam Speaker.
I think this is on.
Yep.
Yeah, so in the Minnesota House of Representatives, we've been more cautious since the pandemic started and all the way through than the Minnesota Senate under the Republicans. So we, implemented a mask mandate early on the House floor, and we have been closed in the state office building until March 21st. We will remain closed, and there's really two reasons there. One is COVID-19. We are not requiring our employees to work in person. So as a result, the building is pretty much empty, which creates a secondary problem, which is a security concern. And threats against legislators are at an all-time high. We had more threats in the year 2021 than I think we've had in my 20 years of legislative service. So until we get people back in the building as employees, we can't have people back in the building as visitors. And so both of those things will happen on Monday, March 21st. We'll have the employees back and the building will be open to the public. In the meantime, the Capitol is fully open. The mask mandate in the Capitol lifted on Monday. I have implemented a lifting of the mask mandate in all House controlled space effective Monday, March 7th. So when you do come back to the state office building, there won't be a mask mandate. But in the meantime, the state capitol is full of incredible meeting spaces. We spent $300 million to renovate the Capitol between about 2014 and 2016, or 2012 and 2014, something like that. And it is gorgeous. And so if you need any assistance in finding places to meet, let us know. And I think in a room of elected city leaders, I don't need to say how important the staff is. I think, where would you be without your city managers, without your director of public works? And we've really had policies that are very deferential to the staff that make the place work.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before we go to Representative Swedzinski, I do want to, I think, emphasize or appreciate that you mentioned kind of the safety aspect of some of your concerns, because I don't know that those have been perhaps as well appreciated by the public throughout this process. So I think that's an important point.
Well, when I ran for re-election in 2014, I remember seeing all the literature that said that we had agreed to build the Taj Mahal, because we built the Minnesota Senate office building. And in that Taj Mahal, they have not only modern HVAC, but they have modern security systems. And the state office building was, I think, last renovated in the early 70s. And we have no cameras on the different floors. Until very recently, we didn't have a way to shut doors in the case of an active shooter. So we're gradually catching up to the people who reside in the Taj Mahal.
Representative Swedzinski.
Well, just first of all, I just want to thank just all the mayor, city council people, and the administrators that are coming to these meetings. I think one of the unique aspects that we have as legislators is often some of the best things you can do is when you're looking someone in the eye and having a real conversation about your position. And but also as a rural legislator, the uniqueness of having the opportunity to have people that we represent that can talk about an issue or speak in committee from a remote location, just because of the long distance traveled. And I think there is a unique place as we move forward. I'm not sure what that looks like to make sure that we can keep engagement to the level that it is via in person, but also folks that maybe don't have the funds or the time to come to the Capitol. And I hope that we can move those things forward, as we keep engagement moving and as we move out of the pandemic mindset. So.
Very good. Yeah, and I think that's been an important innovation as well, that being able to participate in committee meetings via Zoom as well as just meetings with legislators. From our perspective, we've got a lot of issues that are common to a number of cities. We can bring in cities from across the state to talk to a relevant legislator on those issues. So that has been helpful. But again, I also agree with you, Representative Swedzinski, that person-to-person contact is also key. So our next question I'll pose first to Senator Lopez Franson. On Monday, Minnesota Management and Budget announced a current biennium budget surplus of $9.25 billion. What are your caucus's priorities for those funds?
Thank you for the big loaded question and the beginning of the panel, but I'll start with saying that it's not bad news that we don't have a deficit. That's good news that we're not in a deficit. And I would say that is the biggest concern that we have, that whatever we do this session, that we don't set us up for a deficit in future years. we've been here before where we've had surpluses that we give back, and then a few years later, we're in a deficit. So I've sat on the finance committee for a few years I've sat on taxes, and, you know, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Many people go to the legislature to ask for a rebate, a credit. There's a lot of different provisions in our tax code that are, quite frankly, if you don't come to the Capitol, you're not going to get your tax relief. But I think Minnesotans really want some support and some relief when it comes to their budgets, including the strains we've seen in everybody's budget when it comes to inflation. And if you've seen, you know, interest rates are starting to go up, childcare again is an expensive proposition for many families, including not going to work because it's cheaper to stay home and take care of the kiddos than to be at work right now in many settings, because we have a shortage of childcare workers and settings. So we're looking at some sort of property tax relief that really goes to those people who were hurt the most, those folks who are still working paycheck to paycheck, those people who might not have unemployment insurance to support them right now, and they're still looking to go back to the workplace. We're also looking to seeing how we relieve property taxes, right? There's a huge part of your budgets that you get from the state, from LGA, that goes for property tax relief. So how can we continue to support you all, and also our counties who are at the Capitol right now? I just met with them, and they were talking about their county program aid that hasn't received an increase in, I think, a couple decades. I don't recall the exact number. I know it was really astonishing to me to hear that. And what that goes to is direct property tax relief. And then finally, you know, we have a great quality of life. We know that the families are doing the best they can to be within their budgets, but we have an opportunity to spend some of the money. We don't have to spend it all, but spend some of the money in areas that really support our state for future economic success. One thing on our mind is broadband. This is a unique opportunity that we could use one-time money, and every part of the state and the country, obviously, we're getting some federal relief from or federal transfers from the federal government. And we can leverage that, but we're going to still have a gap with broadband. So why don't we do that? And not only helps our businesses, it helps our schools and our students and our families. You really can't start a business in rural Minnesota without broadband nowadays. So I think that's an opportunity that we should look at. There's many others, and a lot of you are bringing those proposals to us, but I'd say to give it all back in a form of a check or a rebate without taking this moment and this Minnesota moment to really set us up for success would be a missed opportunity, but we have to do it cautiously and prudently. And we can't set us up for long-term deficits. So I've been one of the supporters for the Social Security tax complete phase out. That's about $300 million a biennium, so and growing. So it costs money to do tax cuts long-term. This is not a budget session. This is a bonding session and a policy session. So I rather wait to do permanent tax cuts in a regular budget session, again, because that's usually how we look at our forecasts. And this is, again, one-time money, and we can't guarantee we're going to have a future 7.7 or at this point $9.2 billion surplus every year. So I think we need to go through it cautiously, but we certainly have ideas of where to support families, whether it's housing, childcare, and obviously those strains in their everyday budgets like inflation is doing right now.
Madam Speaker, the surplus.
Well, I think one thing that is consistent, I think, across the panel here is you'll hear all of us having a desire to put money back in Minnesotans' pockets. You know, when you hear that the state has a 9.2 billion projected surplus, it seems like, oh, happy days are here again. Everything's great. And on the surface, that seems very, very positive. But we do know that there are Minnesotans who aren't doing so well right now, who are having a really hard time getting by. They're struggling with either the cost of gasoline or the cost of food. And so for the Minnesota House DFL, we're interested in putting money back in Minnesotans' pockets, but we're interested in putting it into the pockets of the people who need it the most. So for example, those people who are struggling to pay childcare, they want to be in the workplace, but they're struggling to find good, high quality childcare for their children. We want to invest in childcare so that those folks can keep more money in their pockets. With regard to a tax rebate, I would favor something that's one time where we're either sending a check like Governor Walz has proposed as sort of like an instant tax rebate. But I think it has to be based on who needs it. And, I'll just speak against the Social Security tax cut. I'll be the person on the panel to do that. That is a tax cut that disproportionately benefits people who are wealthy. Right now, anybody in the state who makes between 55,000 and 60,000 in Social Security does not pay any tax on that income at all. You take a multimillionaire who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I happen to know such an individual, and their family Social Security income is 44,000 a year. They're at the 10% bracket. And so that's a $4,400 tax cut for people who are doing just fine with several vacation homes and several luxury vehicles. On the other hand, I happen to know a first-year teacher who's making $34,000 a year. So my question to you would be, does this $34,000 a year teacher need the $4,400 more than the multimillionaire with multiple luxury vehicles and multiple vacation homes? So that's, I don't think, the best way to look at investing the money from the surplus. I think we should look at those areas of the state where we can have an impact for people who are struggling.
Yep.
Certainly. Well, I think, there's going to be a lot of asks, and some people are going to be happy and some people are going to be sad. I think when we're dealing with a budget surplus, our focus really needs to be looking at what's the what's a long range forecast, looking how will we affect that, but also what tax relief can do. And, I'll disagree with the speaker that I do believe that Social Security tax relief is an important aspect, not just because of what it does, but it would also, if you do happen to have a vacation home, we just want to make sure that it's not your permanent home. And we want to bring people back into the state, and we can't put 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds to work to fill the jobs that we need. So we have to look at who may be retired to fill those jobs that we need. And then they can't do it if they're living in Arizona. And so Social Security tax is one way that we can help, one, give, I think, proper tax relief, but two, also potentially help fill jobs that are needed for our businesses to help grow our economy right here in Minnesota. The conversations have been, what else, obviously just general tax relief, whether it be on businesses, whether it be on property taxes. LGA is one way that I believe we can address that to help lessen the burden of property taxes within our local communities. That will obviously be part of the mix, among others. So, I think we all agree that there'll be some sort of tax relief, and what that potentially looks like. I love it when we can agree on that tax relief is going to be part of the mix, but also, there's going to be some priorities. One of the bills that are moving forward that the cities in my area is the on construction taxes. So when you're building a road or you're building a building, we do have that in the governor's budget to get rid of the sales tax for lump sum contracts. And that's something we've been working on in a very, very long time. That will mean the difference between actual miles of asphalt and 2x4s and buildings and pipe being laid in the ground to make it cheaper for our local communities to actually do those projects. And if we get rid of the sales tax, that will help alleviate some of the inflationary costs that we see within those construction materials, so that the state's not collecting those taxes. And I think that's going to make a decent indent on our local projects. I know an average water treatment project, the sales tax is $250,000. That's all dollars that will stay in those communities rather than go to the state. So I hope that's part of the mix as well.
All right. Senator Johnson.
Thank you. So yeah, the Senate Republicans are laser focused in three main categories. Number one, public safety. We all know the things that are going on across the state right now in public safety. It's not just a big city thing. We see activities that are happening with our communities. We look at the Moorhead paper recently. They have car thefts are up almost double from where they were before. I mean, this is something that's impacting us across the state. So we've got public safety, education. How many of you have children or know of children in your communities that are struggling based on what has been going on across the state now with this e-learning and whatnot? It was an alternative to what was going on out there, but we see what the detriment has been to our children. We want to make sure that we're focusing on education, in particular, the reading aspect of that, because we know the studies, we know what's going on there that says if the children are struggling at reading, they're going to struggle going on through their life. So education's a big one. The third one, and what we had just focused on last week, are the economics of the state. So we've talked a little bit about Social Security benefit tax relief. What we haven't talked about is the Senate Republicans' plan for giving this the biggest tax relief package in Minnesota state history. Now, we've fully funded the government last year through the budget process. We know that there are additional needs throughout the state. However, what we think is that Minnesota is being overtaxed, way overtaxed. We're number 3 and 4 in personal and corporate tax rates across the country. We can't continue to ask Minnesotans to continue to pay more and more into the tax system. When what are they getting out of it? We got to make sure that we're covering the basics. We're going to go back to the basics and make sure that things like infrastructure, that our cities and towns are funding their transportation needs, their public safety needs, their education needs. These are very, very critical things. We've all seen the impacts in our communities over the last 3 years, all right, and the needs that we have within that, the weaknesses we have. We're really dedicated to investing in those aspects. The other thing that we're, kind of looking at too as well, that's an important thing that I know the House is really interested in doing. The governor is in full agreement with the Senate. We need to get the UI fund back up and running again. We're in a very desperate situation with UI across the state, and that's something that needs to be handled. Otherwise, businesses in your towns are going to be coming to you and saying, why didn't we get this fixed? Because we need to get those dollars back to the employees. This is employee benefit. This isn't just a big government program. This is employee benefits, things that have taken care of your employees or your community's employees over the past 2 years. And it's something that we have a duty as the state to take care of. And we got to get that done fast, because the deadline is coming up here shortly. That once that hits, businesses are going to be hurting very badly. And if you haven't heard much about it yet, you're going to be hearing things. They're going to be in your ears real soon. So those are some of the things that we are laser focused on. We've got the public safety, education, economics of the state. We need to get that done.
All right, thank you. So because this is the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, you are contractually obligated to answer an LGA question. So we'll start with Speaker Hortman here. With the surplus and the fact that LGA has not kept up with inflation, and given that its share of the state general fund has shrunk over the years, CGMC is seeking a $90 million increase in the appropriation. What do you think our chances are this year?
Well, I was going to say that Democrats are your redistribution of wealth party. And then I was thinking maybe I shouldn't say that, but that is accurate. That's what LGA is. It takes from those who are rolling in it, and it gives it to those who are not rolling in it due to no fault of their own. There's some states or some cities in the state that have quite a bit of revenue. They happen to be located near the airport, or they happen to be located on 494, 62, 100. And their revenues are such that they don't have much reliance on local government aid. Other places, like the places I grew up, Blaine, Andover, Spring Lake Park, they struggle a little bit more to make ends meet with the revenue that comes in from property taxes. So we're big believers in local government aid. Our tax chair, Paul Marquardt, knows more about local government aid than everybody in this room combined. And I'm sure he will be working as hard as he can to get as large of a package of local government aid as he can through and past our conservative friends in the Minnesota Senate.
Representative Swedzinski?
I think there's going to be an argument made for LGA to some extent, especially when it comes to concerns of public safety. If you look at the increased costs of the recruitment for police officers and folks within law enforcement, or even just healthcare or EMTs or the rest, when you think of LGA, I think of things that it helps small cities provide some of the most basic services, and public safety, EMT, those types of things I think are going to be closely tied together so that we can better recruit and better keep our small cities and towns safe. So that would be my guess. Whether that's a $90 or $90 million fulfillment or not, that's yet to be discovered. But my guess is there'll be some movement potentially in that direction. So,
all right, Senator Johnson.
Well, thank you. We are not the party of redistribution of wealth, which may be the wrong thing to say in this room, but no, this is, I haven't seen the $90 million proposal yet.
Bach has one.
Senator Bach is carrying that. over there. But as somebody who lives on a border community, and I know we got Mark back there and the Roseau group back there that deal with many of the same issues. It's something that we want to make sure that LGA is taking care of the basics of our community. That's what it was intended for. And if we're lacking in some of those basics, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's that, we've got to be taking a look at that. It's always something that's in play each year that comes up in the legislature. And I'm interested in making sure that our communities across the state have what they need within their communities to support their constituents. And so I haven't seen the proposal yet. Bach apparently has it, but it's something that we will be taking a look at in the upcoming year.
All right, Senator Lopez Franson.
Thank you. And you mean weeks, because we got deadlines moving as well. So and I've heard about this proposal, and I want to start by saying I think Speaker Hortman might have been picking on my district, but I'm proud. I'm very proud to be close to 494 and 100 and 169. So I represent the communities of Edina, Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, and we have a decent tax base, and we are a net contributor to LGA and fiscal disparities, and we do it proudly because we want to make sure that our state is well equipped, well funded, and people have an opportunity to thrive anywhere. And we also, use the same roads that you all do to go to your cabin and go to northern Minnesota and really enjoy the amenities of our great state. So that's kind of the notion of how we operated as a state, and we make sure that we contribute to areas that need it the most. Whether you have a drought in your district, we are there to step up as a state and help those communities. If there's an emergency crisis as well, that's what we do as a state. We help each other out. So I have no problem supporting LGA personally, and I think our caucus as a whole has been a supporter of LGA in the past. And we know that at the end of the day, we have to be good state partners, and it takes a partnership between local and state and county, and we recognize that. The strains on public safety, obviously, it's not just about recruitment. It's about making sure that we also have well-trained workforce in law enforcement. And that's something that our caucus is really keenly looking into, and that we make sure that we have the best policing, but we also have prevention strategies for violence to happen to begin with. So intervention and crime prevention is also a focus. So I'm sure there's a lot more that you all do with LGA, but we also have to do our part. I would say we don't fully fund these areas, right? There's not enough money in the system, or we can't tax you to death to fully fund education, for instance. One of the things we do is funded at inflation, just fund the inflation every 2 years. And that we obviously know is not enough to support our schools and our students and our teachers and our parents. So I think there'll be discussions about how to support them. And we've all gone through a lot. So we're lucky that we were able to get some federal funds, but we also need to make sure we tackle the big issues at hand and set us up for success again with this budget surplus this year.
All right. So question for the group here. Whose city has a request for the bonding bill or a need for money through the PFA? Yeah, a lot of folks, a lot of needs out there. So let's talk bonding bill. And we'll start with Representative Swedzinski. What are the chances here of a pretty sizable bonding bill? What do you think the number is going to be? And what do you think the priorities for it should be?
Well, if we had a crystal ball, in case you're living under a rock, it is a bonding bill year. So my guess is there will be a bonding bill. Obviously, the priorities can change throughout the state depending on what your regional wants and needs are. I think there's a lot of appetite for PFA. It's our goal. I'd like to see a $200 to $300 million investment in kind of that critical infrastructure area, particularly. But beyond that, looking at very nuts and bolts and ground driven approach to, it's not going to be a lot of pretty things, but a lot of things that are maybe underground. And so sewer systems and the rest and very basic infrastructure, I could see that there are going to be some sort of a cash portion as well. So the projects that maybe don't fit within a lot of those parameters, my guess is at the end of the day, you're going to see a decent cash part that would be considered bonding, but not necessarily need the required votes to get there. And so between a mix of the two, how large that be, my guess is sub $1 billion, but potentially 800 million, but we got to set a marker someplace. So thank you.
All right, Senator Johnson.
Yeah, so as the representative said, we will be more than likely having a bonding bill coming out of this session this year, but it's going to be a unique year when you're looking at the bonding bill. Just think about how we've used our infrastructure over the last 2 years. I think we've redefined how we use everything from, our state office buildings, our local community office buildings, to the driving patterns, to different things across the state. We have to reevaluate the infrastructure that we do have as well. So as that bill is coming together, it'll be, we've got Senator Bach that has gone around the state and done a lot of the investigation of what needs to be done. It'll be interesting to see the difference in what that bonding bill looks like than it does on a normal year, just to see if things have changed as far as the asks from different communities across the state. I think there will be a little bit a different look to it than previous bills on that. But again, like the representative said, a lot of that stuff is not going to be pretty things. A lot of it's going to be buried items that we need. We see the needs across the state for that as well. As far as the number goes, I think the other thing that if we're going to have a large tax relief bill, we've got to be also careful that we're not setting the books in a way that's going to set us up for a structural issue with debt service. So I want to make sure that we're, when we're weighing that out, how that's going to look, that'll help determine what the size of our proposal is going to be as far as the bonding bill as well.
All right, Senator Lopez Franson.
Thank you. And just to remind you, bonding bill originates in the House. So I can't wait to hear from Speaker Hortman, her path to getting that done. We certainly want to do our part in the Senate to give those votes to provide for a robust bonding bill. Again, I think we're in a unique opportunity point in time for Minnesota. We have about $4 billion coming to Minnesota just for infrastructure, roads and bridges. And we need to do a state match. So I do believe we'll be able to do that with the $9 billion surplus. We should be able to not argue about putting our part so we can bring in some federal dollars for infrastructure all over our state. But we also have housing needs that we hear all across Minnesota, whatever size community. I have them in my own city. If you try to even buy any houses right now, and it's just a little out of reach for many startup families. So not even tackling the homeless population that's starting to grow. We also have a very big need of just workforce housing and just entry-level housing all over the state. So this is a unique opportunity that we can do that. We also, I would say, we need to fund some of these local projects that are very important and critical to our quality of life. I have a few in my district, and we usually don't have a lot, but the Bramer Arena, when we talk about the state of hockey, I'm pitching for my own project here. But we have a great opportunity to do that because people need recreation. That is one of the things that we really appreciate about Minnesota, how much we've invested in our trails and our parks and rec and DNR, and that costs money, and we certainly want to make sure that we keep some of these areas and facilities open. But some of these are state assets, like education facilities too. I was with the University of Minnesota, and I get a lot of my district is a moderate district. I hear every perspective, and I have people say, why do we keep funding the U? And talking to some of the representatives from the alumni group, and I'm a gopher from the grad school, so I'm also an alum. But they were talking about this chemistry lab that has not been updated for 95 years, and I just thought, like, we are a great university, land grant university, and we still don't fully fund all the areas, and it's hard. Obviously, it's a huge organization, but I'm sure you have colleges and technical colleges in your district. I also have Normandale, and there's always going to be a list of needs, whether it's HEAPR and to make sure that those state assets remain top notch and good quality, and that we also are keep those and maintain them safely. So there's a lot of asks always. It's just a question of what we prioritize, and we really do look at you all to help us prioritize them, because if we don't hear from you, we're just going to make these decisions at the very last minute in session. Usually it's what it happens, and we need to hear what you, I mean, it's unfortunate. We've had failed bonding bills because we can't come to agreement at the last minute. So I hope there's a lot of push for us to get our job done, and also support from you all to include some of these projects that are really critical to your communities.
Madam Speaker.
Yeah, so looking at the House perspective on bonding is we'll be looking at building off of what the bipartisan infrastructure bill from Washington, DC did. So this is a moment to look and see what did they provide, and how can we leverage state funds to get the maximum amount of federal dollars back? Because like Edina is a net contributor to fiscal disparities, Minnesota is a net contributor to the United States of America tax base, and we want to get as many of those Minnesota dollars back into the state as we can. So that means providing matching funds to pull down as much federal resources as we can. You know, if you look at the American Rescue Plan that Biden and the Democrats sent, it sent us about $8.9 billion. And it seems like not a coincidence that now we have a projected budget surplus of $9.2 billion. And that's not even to account for all the unemployment insurance and PPP that came before that. So building on the investment that the federal government has made in Minnesota makes a lot of sense for us at this point in time. But in addition to that, I think, you know, to build on what Senator Lopez Franzen said, Minnesotans during COVID-19 loved their parks. They got into the outdoors. We have some DNR buildings that rival the University of Minnesota chemistry lab in their age and condition. And we've got to invest in these assets in the state that people really value. And we saw them, you know, make use of in record numbers. I've already had good conversations with Minority Leader Doubt and the House bonding lead, Dean Erdahl. So I'm hoping we can get things moving early. I would like a good old fashioned conference committee. I think we have some new legislators who don't even know what a good old fashioned conference committee looks like. Some of us can remember what that is like. And so, you know, we'll be trying to push that bill out earlier rather than later.
Awesome. I like good old fashioned conference committees. And I think that's a good thing to shoot for.
Do you remember the Rumble in the Rotunda? It was Phil Krinke versus, I think, Tom Bach.
Yeah, that was a
back in the day.
couple of years before my time, but there have been some legendary ones indeed. So we promised these guys we'd get them out of here by 1 o'clock. So I'm going to finish with one last kind of lighter question. So this morning's drear notwithstanding, it is March and spring is coming. And so I want to ask what your favorite part of spring is, but the only rule is it can't be the end of the legislative session. So we'll start with Senator Johnson. Your favorite part of spring?
My absolute favorite part of spring is when the ice comes off the lake for the first time. I'm up northern Minnesota. I grew up on a lake. So when the ice comes off in the springtime, the water is absolutely crystal clear. It is the best time to go out fishing and boating. Well, you can't do a whole lot of fishing until the opener, but it absolutely, when I think of springtime, I think of that moment when the ice actually comes off, and it is just a beautiful time to be out exploring nature in northern Minnesota.
All right, Senator Lopez Franzen.
Kind of similar. I have a 5 and a 6-year-old. They're boys, and I want them out of my house. And so, and spring is usually very dirty because they're boys, but it's kind of fun to just see them muddy and just wandering off. And we have a cabin in Finland, Minnesota, and my husband's family is from Morrison County. So going to the farm and just, you know, doing whatever you need to do to clean up to get ready for potato seedlings and all that jazz.
3 things, I guess: tulips, then cherry blossoms, and then lilacs.
I would say just starting to get out in the field and start planting and that as well. So also just that first drive you make home after you've been in St. Paul all week, and every time you've come home, the grass has been brown and nasty. That first time you drive up the driveway and your grass turned green while you were gone. That's always, it's always nice.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We really do appreciate all of your time here and your commitment as public servants and the work that you do here in the legislature. Let's give them a round of applause.